Alright, let's get straight into this. Bikepacking setups. I've been asked numerous times over the last 2.5 years, or close enough to 2.5 years, what I use, what bags I use, how I pack, how do I decide what to bring, how I deal with different weathers. I'm not going to go in this video into exactly what I pack. This is just the equipment that I use to make that possible. I'll do a packing list another time, and that's a bit harder because that always changes depending on the environment around you. But for the bike and the bags and the setup and the group set, for me, that's been largely the same since August 2022, and at the moment it's December 2024, and I'm in Tagazout in Morocco. Before we actually go into it, I just want to preface this with a couple of things. The big one being, does the perfect bikepacking setup exist? And kind of the real answer is that it doesn't. Like, it's completely up to you. You know, depending on where your enjoyment is in the sport, what you want to ride, what the route you're going to be doing is, where you want to ride in the future, how much comfort you want, depending on how much you want to rough it. You know, and those last two are kind of hugely dependent on how long you're planning on being away. Like, it's much more comfortable to be able to rough it for a short amount of time, compared to if you're going away for a multi-week or a multi-month sort of trip. You want to have kind of some few comforts, and that's going to change the bike that you use, maybe a road bike or a gravel bike or a mountain bike, and how many bags you bring, for example. The way I like to ride is having freedom to be able to kind of make it up on the fly. I like going where the wind is on my back and kind of following opportunities. That means my setup is pretty open and flexible. Is there one size fits all to this? No. And that's not the point of this video, to say, you know, this is the one that you need. This is just for you to get an insight into what I choose to ride, for my preference in riding. The second thing I want to preface this with is the weight of the bike. And I'm just going to be straight up and honest, I don't care about the weight of my bike. I'm not one that tries to get it to a certain amount. My opinion with that is, like, I should just be stronger to ride the bike and the things that I want. Sure, the lighter bike might be easier at first, and 100% the hardest day on the bike for me was the first day riding down from London to Dover to get the ferry over to France. But after that, it just gets easier and easier as you get more comfortable, more stronger, and more capable on your bikepacking setup. So for my bikepacking setup, it is everything that I want it to be. I want to have some gravel and rougher days and kind of go away from the people a bit, but I can't deny that, you know, there's a track cyclist inside of me who's grown up racing on the velodrome that some days just wants to be able to smash it out on the road. I kind of say all these things not to make the decision or choices more difficult for what your setup is. I think you make what you have work, but it's just to kind of preface this with, the best one doesn't exist, and in my mind, I'm not caring about weight, which a lot of people do. Without further ado, this is my bikepacking setup. I ride a 58cm Specialized Diverge STR. It's both an extremely capable and comfortable gravel bike that I've taken in races off and on the road, as well as a bike that is extremely well suited to bike touring with strong, thick tubing, which can bear the weight of all of my panniers, which, depending on how much food or water I'm carrying, weighs between 40 and 45 kilograms. As it stands today, I've put about 30,000 kilometers of use into this frame, as I switched from the standard Diverge to the STR model when I was in Malaysia about 1.5 years ago. The difference with the STR model is the addition of the rear future shock to complement the front future shock in the headset. I was really glad to see this addition. When I first rode the Diverge, the older model, the first thing I noticed was actually how stiff the rear felt because of how the front was so compliant. And I was really happy to see the addition of the rear future shock because it really complements it and makes it an extremely comfortable ride on the road for long days and when you're on the rougher terrain. Both the front and rear future shocks can be turned on and off. I nearly always ride with the front on to accommodate the bumps in the road, and the rear is usually off when I'm on the road and on if I'm on gravel or rougher terrain. I find it particularly useful when my route switches from gravel to road frequently, because when I get onto the gravel I can just switch the rear future shock on and I can feel kind of the benefits of running lower pressures. Although tuning the future shock doesn't actually help with any traction or control, it does help with a smoother ride, and I don't find it takes anything away from the power transfer. But, you know, admittedly, that's like the last thing I think about. I'm not riding to train, I'm riding to be outside, so efficiency or power transfer is the last thing on my mind. The bike can accommodate 47mm tyres, and I run 42s which pump up to about 45 on my rims. The concept from Specialized with this system was to isolate the rider and allow the bike to absorb bumps and vibrations without sacrificing frame efficiency or responsiveness. And like, truthfully, this works. It's not just a marketing spiel. I love getting onto the gravel because it feels like I'm floating above it and the bike just wants to go. I can embrace the speed because the bumps in the road are minimized, and honestly, it just feels like cheating. It's such a comfy ride. The STR is a very robust and hardy bicycle. Its frame and forks are carbon, which some purists out there might squirm at, but this is a really well-made bike. I always get asked what's gone wrong with the bike over the last 2 years, and my answer is a boring one. Carbon is reliable, it takes the road vibrations, and neither the frame, carbon wheels, carbon seat rails I used have ever failed me. I was really nervous of this before I left, to be honest. If doing long distance on a carbon frame with hydraulic brakes, with electronic gears was the right idea, but after over 2 years, it's been fine. I haven't had any problems, and I would recommend it. The STR comes with 3 mounting holes on the fork, which I use to store my fork bags. There are no mounting options on the rear triangle, but because I use the tail fin setup, which uses the skewer to bear the weight, this isn't a problem for me. To accommodate the tendon of the future shocks, you're limited on what size frame bag you can use, so I was relieved when Tailfin released their range of bags, and I could fit one in which, given their construction, can actually hold more than the ones I used before. One of my favourite parts of the bike is the removable cover on the down tube, which Specialized called the swap box. This gives me extra storage within the frame to keep tools, spares, a jacket, and has also served as a little useful place to store valuables. When I was riding across India, when ATMs were pretty scarce, I would keep my cash in there because it's never in my pockets, and I've done the same in other countries, but that's where I kind of first thought of the idea. Now, the only thing that I actually miss on the STR is that there's no ability to fit a front neck. The seat post is within a sleeve, which is within the frame, and it means that you can't actually drill into it, and it's why the bottle cage bolts are kind of not recessed in the frame and stick out a little bit more, but we'll get onto that a bit more when we cover gearing later. I've been running Hunt wheels for the last 3 years now, and I'm extremely happy with them. My wheels of choice are Hunt 42 Limitless Gravel Aero wheel set. They're 42mm deep, but the real strength comes from their massive 36mm exterior and 25 interior width. The wider rim cushions road imperfections so much more effectively and accommodates larger tyres which run on lower pressure, again softening the ride and making the overall experience much more comfortable. They are so robust and take in everything I've thrown at them. Given the weight of the bike, the difference in a few PSI can be the difference between a super comfortable ride and smashing the rim all the time and bottoming out. I have smashed these rims on cobblestones, on rough roads in Southeast Asia, taking them on corrugations. I've smashed the rims on edges of deep potholes. They've never faulted me. They are absolutely bomb-proof. I've heard the smash and I've got off my bike and I've run my finger all the way around the rim because I thought there's no way that they've not cracked. But still, nothing's gone wrong. I think in the last 50,000 kilometers with a bike that's weighing between 40 and 45 kilos, I've broken one spoke. I trust these wheels so much, they're extremely comfortable and I would take them anywhere with me. I run a Sun Deluxe Dynamo hub on the front wheel, which means I never have to worry about charging the lights. It means I can also charge my power banks, although I never finished my power banks and not had any prospect of charging them back up with more than a day away. So this really is part of my bike that I could live without. You also can't service the bearings on Sun hubs yourself. They have to be sent back to Germany, which when you're on the road, it's a real ball ache. This is my third Sun hub now, as the bearings have gone on all my previous ones. I heard before that they're pretty indestructible, but somehow I've destroyed 3 of them. 42mm Specialized Pathfinder is my tyre of choice, but with the super wide Hunt rims, these actually pump out to about 45, so extremely comfortable. I've run a mix of the standard and S-Works versions of the Pathfinder over the years and can say that the S-Works ones are extremely fast and light, but far less durable, whereas the standard version have a slightly deeper tread and are much more hard wearing. Right now I'm in Morocco, about to start a 2,000 kilometer journey from the coast in Tagazout where I am now, inland, and then up to Tangier. I've chosen to run the S-Works version on the front because it's what I had on before and I didn't want to pay for another tyre, and I've chosen to run a standard version on the rear where all the weight is concentrated because it wears out a lot faster. Another dilemma I had before leaving was whether to trust my shifting and Groupset to mechanical or electronic gears. I love the feeling of mechanical gears. I've always rated riders like Contador who, you know, when the World Tour was shifting to Di2, kind of maintained having mechanical Dura Ace on his bike for the benefit in weight and for its reliability in its shifting. And so in truth, I was never really convinced by electronic gears. I thought they were just something that the cycling market was pushing to us for something that cost a lot more and didn't actually change the ride experience a whole amount. I remember a conversation with my dad before leaving where I was pretty honest and said I didn't know if I was doing the right thing by going with electronic gears. You know, more complications, one more thing to charge, one more thing that's pretty difficult to fix. If I'm in some far-flung place, really, it would have just been more complications. I very much still champion mechanical gears. I think 105 mechanical way back when was the group set of the people. Would my dream bike go with mechanical now? Possibly. I think it might do, but I'm not going to let my love of mechanical cloud my judgment on the efficiency and reliability of electronic gears like I see a lot of people do. They've come a long way in the 15 years since they were first introduced to the Pro Peloton, and I think more people should be a bit accommodating that they're a spot in the market and they're good, and that's quite hard to admit for some people, especially myself. I run a 1x SRAM rival ETEP Axis. When the battery runs out on the rear mech, it's not the end of the world. I just jump off the bike and change the battery with one of my spares in about 15 seconds. I then charge that battery at some point during the next 700 to 1,000 kilometers and repeat that. I remember one time doing a border run in Vietnam, up a mountain in the pissing rain, mud sludge. It was super dark, you know, the light had already gone and my battery ran out. I just jumped off, changed it, and I was back going again. It's those sort of situations actually where changing a cable would have been the worst thing imaginable and completely ruined the day from the troublesome border run that it already was. But that's one time that really sticks out to me as a huge benefit of electronic gears. The SRAM has honestly been the most reliable part of the bike. The only problems I've had were in Japan at the end of the day riding through sleet and snow and sub-zero temperatures when my mech froze and wouldn't shift, and the night before an ultra when I replaced the shifter battery and didn't notice that the contact points had been bent and wasn't touching anymore. For my cranks, I'm relatively tall at 6'2", so I run my cranks long at 175mm. I grew up on the track, so I'm used to smaller 165mm cranks, but I find the longer length much more comfortable to maintain speed on the flats, whereas the smaller cranks are a lot nicer to climb on. As I mentioned earlier, the Diverge STR has no capability to run a front mech, which I do notice and miss. Therefore, I run a 40-tooth chainring on the front and a 1044 block on the back. Some extra bullets in the chamber would always be welcome, especially because I spent so long in Asia and the gradients there are just insane. But I always want to ride a comfortable cadence, and I find that when I'm on the flats, more often than not, that's where I want the extra gear to be, whereas if I used a 1050 cassette, you know, for the steeper climbs, I would actually use it far less, and where I have used one before switching back, I just felt like I was missing a big step in the middle of the block. Would I prefer 2x? Yeah, if I'm honest, I think 2x is important. I think when you're spending so much time on such a heavy bike, getting the perfect cadence is really important to prevent injury and strain. You know, I tell myself that you ride the cadence or the cadence rides you, and if you have 2x, you just have more options and you can be more comfortable for the speed that you're going, rather than having to go a little bit faster or a little bit slower so that your cadence is just right. With the distance and time frame involved in my bikepacking trip, I knew I wanted to go for panniers as opposed to a saddlebag setup. It would allow me to carry more belongings, have some comfort along the way, and like I mentioned earlier, weight's not a huge concern for me. I also carry a laptop with me to edit videos like this, and I needed a space to be able to store that. Therefore, for me, there was really only one option, and that was tail fin. I think they made panniers cool again with this modern, sleek and streamlined design that doesn't look out of place on a high-end carbon bicycle, and that carries through in all of their bags. On the rear, I run an Aeropack with an 18-litre capacity, as well as two 22-litre panniers. On the front, I run two 5-litre panniers and a small 9-litre bar bag, which holds my sleeping bag and extra soft items. On the frame, I run a 1.9-litre wedge frame bag and a small top tube bag for extra storage. In total, in theory, this gives me about 80 litres of storage, which seems insane to be able to keep on a bike, but I'm never maxing that out. Tailfin gives two options for their arch material, alloy or carbon. I run the carbon option for the arch for similar reasons to those of my frame. I actually just trust it a bit more. I had an alloy arch before which actually gave way when I was in India, which brought on this long and tedious task of finding someone in rural Maharashtra who could gas weld aluminium back together. You know, thanks to the kindness and pragmatism of the people there, that issue was fixed, and I have a great story that I've told multiple times about it. But it's definitely not something that I wanted to be repeated, So when I got the opportunity to switch over to the carbon arch, I took it. Nothing carbon on my bike has ever broken bikepacking, whereas the only things that have gone wrong have been made of alloy. Although heavy and bulky, the rear system allows me to carry all I could need and more. The highlight of the system as a whole for me is the clasps. It might sound like a small thing, but it makes it so quick and easy to remove or attach bags, and makes a world of difference when you have to live day in, day out off the bike. The latest addition to this is the bar bag, which has been a game changer with the mounting system, and as with all bags, they're held so solid on the bike and they don't wobble around or sway at all when you're out of the saddle. The bar bag is also held away from the frame, which is extremely welcome, preventing rubbing and damage to the frame, which is something I had on my old model, and my bar bag was wearing away at the carbon on my headset. My contact points on the bike are a specialised power with mirror saddle, Shimano XT SPD pedals and a Roval Terra carbon bars, which I run at 42 cm wide. The carbon bars complement the Future Shock extremely well for long days in the saddle, and my arms are rarely sore. I also run short T2 extensions from Profile Design. More often than not, I'm using these to sit more upright than down in the skis, and they also give me extra mounting room for my lights and Peak Design phone mounts. I run 2 phone mounts on my bike, both from Peak Design, and they only work with the Peak Design phone case. I stay clear of phone mounts for a long time because I thought they were an eyesore, which they are if you're on an SL8 at your local crit, but I honestly wish I went onto them a bit sooner. Quick accessibility to my phone when I'm on a descent so I can take pictures and not be rummaging around. Easy viewing of music or podcasts and shifting things around. Doing maps in cities and trying to get around the place. Even just to simply keep my pockets lighter. The phone connects through magnets and a clip system, so honestly, it's never going to fall off, and I could probably pick up the bike from the mount. To remove, there's just a small button on the side which retracts the clip, and you can just easily take off the phone. To conclude, this bike has taken me so far over the last 2 years. As I was planning this video, it really occurred to me that I'm not actually sure if this is the perfect bike for me, or I'm the perfect rider for this bike. I kind of thought it's a redundant statement at first, and practically it is, but my sentimental self realised that me and this bike have grown into each other over time, and we really complement each other in the way that I like to ride and I like to explore the world. Sure, if I was doing a trip that had a lot more rugged off-road, single track hiker bike, I would go for a different setup, but as an all-rounder gravel bikepacking setup, I'm a huge fan of the STR. So we'll leave it there for now. At the most, I hope you found this helpful. At the least, I hope you found it interesting. Do let me know your thoughts and questions in the comments below. There is some extra bike jewellery that I realised as I'm recording this that I didn't mention that you might see, such as the bell and some little charms on the bike. So if you have any other questions about the setup that I use, just leave them down there. Or if there's anything in particular you want to know, just sing out. Sometimes I miss messages, but I do try my hardest to get back to all of them. So until then, I'll catch you soon.